When I think about edge AI and what it means, I think the important thing is to start by taking apart those two words. What's the edge? The edge is where value is created. And AI, of course, is a big buzzword that everybody thinks about. You might think all the way back to, early movies that talked about rogue intelligences taking over the world. But for government agencies, it's very practical to bring these two concepts together, because the opportunity for government agencies when thinking about creating value at the edge, which is where the citizens are, where the workers are that work for various agencies, analytics, artificial intelligence being a class of that, creates a new opportunity for efficiency and increased productivity. So the real opportunity exists in areas that agencies have been pursuing for a long time. How do they do more with less resources? How do they have better responsiveness to citizens calling in for support? How do they take care of aging infrastructure and look for ways to coach new people coming into the workforce how to take care of vital installations? These are the kinds of efforts that we see are critical in edge AI applications for government agencies. When I think about the kind of things that agencies will experience as they start to adopt edge AI applications for their own modernization efforts, I'm really optimistic because of the lessons we've already seen show up in our real world experiences. Even before COVID hit and the efforts that we saw go on in streamlining our airports, you saw the ways that we were incorporating new types of analytics to, find and examine X-rays and provide coaching to TSA specialists who may be new on the job and don't know exactly what to look for. We started to see applications of technology in all aspects of security management, but also agencies looking at how they manage infrastructure. Inevitably, when we think about applications of edge AI in the modern world, we're always going to be thinking about how we respond to disasters. And whether that's looking at things, that have a human touch, like a collapsing building or an active shooter incident, or maybe even a wildfire. All of these applications, lend themselves well to applications of edge AI experiences. So for example, let's say I'm managing a forest fire. If I deploy an edge-based inference system out on a mobile device and drop it out in the middle of a forest, I can use sensor data to start to sense how that temperature or what smoke is moving or how the wind is changing. And that can advise my firefighters in a much stronger sense what's going to be happening next. What we have to recognize is that edge AI is also pushing the network closer to where the people are. So instead of having to count on the fact that we have large backhauls back to the cloud or back to some data center, we can now actually deploy mobile edge compute right out to where it's needed.
So one of the biggest challenges that I think I've seen is really around the cohesive strategy between your cloud migration for the agency, understanding what that edge is. And then one of the other pieces that I'm seeing is that secure supply chain, right? How do I secure this edge and ensure that it's not adding an additional risk without the benefit as well? So when you start looking at the supply chain, where you're sourcing this material from, how you're standing this in and extensiating your existing services out to a remote site, which could be near edge, your far edge, or your critical edge, right? Think about things such as mobile vehicles or mobile stations, drones, things of that nature. Those have the capability of doing some computation there locally or rolling up to that next, the far edge, if you're talking far to critical. And maybe that's where that computation has to occur and being able to distribute that information appropriately. Security has to be approached in an intrinsic fashion. It can no longer be a bolt-on type of scenario. It's not your car, right? Where you add features and functions, change the muffler, or new paint job and things of that nature. It has to be something that you think about from the beginning. So I think that paradigm shift for the workforce in the retraining of our minds and catching the policies and documentation up to that, I think that's probably the largest obstacle that we have to face.
So when I think of the barriers that our customers are facing today, one, it starts with that education. Do we even understand what we're asking to be deployed? Do we really understand what it can do for us and how it can help with our mission and our business of being in the federal government space? So we'll take for an example, if you have a director come in and say, I need to deploy edge analytics to run natural language processing, do the folks underneath that director actually understand what that means? Does the director actually understand what that means? So making sure we're all speaking from that same data dictionary is very important and is key to our government being successful in this space. Now, that's great. So we have everybody talking the same language, but now do we actually have the workforce that can go out, deploy these algorithms, understand them, maintain them, understand what the feedback loop is, and make sure that they are doing exactly what they were intended to do. So that skill set availability, if we don't have it, how are we going to build it? That is a challenge that we're seeing. If we can't augment with private sector folks and we don't have the skill set in the staff today, what are we going to do? How are we going to get to that next step? So these things are really great to get to a broad set, but where do we start? If you're an agency that hasn't even begun this journey yet, where do you start? What is that next step for you? It should be a proof of concept to go out and really take your plan and execute against it in this small, controlled area. Data is the key to this. Understanding how your data is being processed, how you're tagging your data, how you're taking that data in. Where are you getting the data from? Is it good data? Is it bad data? You're going to have times you want to retrain data. There's a ton of questions that go into that care and feeding and sustainment of your edge AI, but none of these steps are insurmountable. And we believe that if you follow through in some basic outline of this plan, you can go from zero to a proof of concept right up to having a deployed edge AI system.